This week on Angelo's Workbench, the stock Firebird 400 is getting green, the drag one is moving along a little bit too, we're spending our time in the spray booth. Come on and join me. Don't forget to follow the link in my description to check out Hobbynut Models. So when we were over in the spray booth, we had just a little bit of a paint goober happen right there. And it feels somewhat smooth, but it's just a little bit off and there's a little bit of something in there. So what we're going to do is I got myself a little bit of 1000 grit here. I'm just going to fold this over and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to do a gentle dry sand. Now you'll notice I'm doing a dry sand, and that is because, hey, this is water-based primer. And if you put water on here, you're basically wet sanding with its thinner, and that doesn't work. So in between coats of the primer, I do a dry sand, and then I brush it off, wipe it off. And what I'm looking to do here is just flatten this out so that I can go over with another coat. And I can feel just a little bit of, still, a little bit of texture to it. And I've exposed a little bit of plastic on the high part, which is expected. And is really okay. I don't mind that at all. I'm going to come in with primer again anyway. What I'm after is just making sure that this section here is smooth. Because if it's not, when I put the paint on, the paint is going to build up a layer, then the clear coat's going to build up a layer, and you're always going to be able to see that imperfection. There we go. And then while I'm at it, I'm just kind of feeling the roof. There's just a little bit of texture there, not much. So again, I'll just give it a little bit of there, and that's so much smoother. It always tends to, on the parts that face upward, always tend to accumulate a little bit of, I don't know if it's dust or what, probably dust. And again, I'm not going too crazy here. It's all very, very smooth already. I'm just smoothing it out a little more. That's all. And that looks good. And now we'll just take a look at this one. There we go. Just kind of smoothing it out a little bit. And then same thing with this trunk lid. There's just a little bit of texture. You can hear it with the sandpaper. Hits it just a little bit. This one probably won't need another coat of primer. Because this one is still nice and smooth. And I'll blow off all this dust. Because again, you can't really wash it. Because if you put it in water, again, it's a water-based primer. Guess what? You're soaking it in thinner. So you got to forget about the water when you're working with the water-based paints. No water until after you shoot your 2K clear. Once you shoot your 2K clear, then you can wet sand and you can wash just like you would a normal lacquer-based finish because it's no longer water-based. You seal in the water base. There we go. I forgot to look at the back of this car. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, this all looks really good. And this is the spot where I had that little fisheye. I'm going to give that a little, you can still see the essence of it in the reflection there. I'm going to give that a little focus right there. There we go. Yeah, this one had some issues. This one, I think I had some water still in the seam here. And I've worn through the primer there to plastic, but that's okay, because this one's going to get another coat. So I'm going to go give this one another coat of primer. I don't think anything else needs any more primer, just this one. And then we're going to get to mixing colors. Come on back. Well, I am in the midst of de-spruing parts. It is a part C, a sea of parts. And I wanted to point out to you guys just quickly that there is an error in the instructions. They call out for part number 86, which is the for the drag wheel, but in fact 86 is the stock wheels. You're supposed to use 68 for the front wheels, or excuse me, the front drag wheels, and 67 for the rear drag wheels. The backs they have labeled correctly. How they did this is a little confusing because they have them labeled correctly here. In the parts list up in front, they say 67 is the rear drag wheel, 68 is the front drag wheel, which is correct. Part 86 is the regular stock outer wheel, of which there are 4. Now, a lot of these wheels look similar, so be careful when you're looking at them. These are torque thrusts, these are the stock wheels, but they're all 5 spokes, and they kind of look similar, especially if you're using weak eyes or looking at the chrome. It can be confusing. So just be mindful when you're trimming out these wheels, getting ready to build your rims. Just, that's not 86. That is actually part number 67 right there. So there you go. Helpful tip. Still working on de-spruing some parts. I'm into the drag version now, building up this drag motor. And I noticed that here on the drag motor portion, it says step 3 is A, which is stock. That includes the front end of the motor block. So you would be inclined to skip these steps. And then you come right down here to B and you're building the blower. But aha, they left this off. You'll notice that it appears in the picture. And it serves as a base for the belts. So you're going to need this piece, piece 13, from step 3, even though step 3 is labeled A. So now what they did, like for example with the distributor, they have it shown here, but then they also have it shown down here. So they just forgot to copy this little guy and put him down here. So make sure that if you're building the drag version, the custom version, and you're building this big blown 400, make sure that you don't forget that part 13 has to come down, get installed on the block, or else when you put these belts on, it's not going to line up. So we're getting ready to mix up some colors for the cars. So everything, all the colors that I plan on spraying. So the stock one is going to be, and I've wiped these down with my tack cloth to prepare them. They have been finalized. Their primer is good, and they're ready for color. So now, basically, what I'm getting ready to spray, I'm going to spray some Wicked Silver. Wicked Metallic Silver, it's called. And so what I do is I like Createx colors. I have their sheet. It tells you how to airbrush it, what to thin it with, how to spray it. You know, higher pressure settings, 35 to 45 for the opaque. For the transparents, you can vary it a little bit. Best 25 to 40. They like to go with pretty high pressures. But then they also tell you what to thin it with and how to do it. So basically, you're going to take the Wicked Silver. We're going to mix it with some UVLS Clear 10%. This turns it into an acrylic-based polyurethane, which then makes it better for harder surfaces, as opposed to like this stuff you can spray on a t-shirt if you wanted. This makes it a little bit better for harder surfaces. And again, this is all water-based. So we have to use our 2K Clear over the top of it after. And then this is the thinner 4011. Again, 10% by volume, up to 20 if you need to for the airbrush. I usually end up right in between 10 and 20% with 10% UVLS Clear and then whatever I'm spraying in silver. So why am I spraying silver? I'm spraying silver because I need a base for all the other colors that I'm going to spray. So this is Pearl Green and Pearl Satin Gold, which when you combine these two together, you're going to get the green that I'm going to use. So I'm thinking of using the green and the gold because upon consulting the instructions, they say that the emerald, the green that they use is emerald green and gold metallic at a 50-50 mix. Same thing for the engine block. They're mixing iron and blue to get the 50-50 mix. But I'm liking the 50-50 mix of the emerald green and the gold metallic. So I'm going to try that as a go. But these paints are pearlized. They are transparent. So you need a base. And the metallic silver will be my base. Then for the other car, I plan on using metallic silver, which this will be the final color. And then a pearl red will be over the other part, though I'm looking for kind of a little bit of a metal flake, or like a candy apple red. So I'm going to mix a little pearl copper in with it and see what I get, maybe like 80-20. And this will all be custom on the fly mixing. So we'll see what I get. Then I'll go over the whole thing with 2K clear. And then just in case I need it, I got out the opaque green and yellow to mix together to get the green that I want if I need an opaque. So these are not transparent. But I think I'm going to stick with the pearls. I think I'll get a better result. And over the metallic silver, they should look quite striking. So let's get started with mixing up the silver. So for this color, I'm going to try to mix up just enough. If I have to mix up more, it's no big deal because there's only one bottle going in. For the custom mixes, I will be sure to mix up plenty because I would rather throw some away than try to recreate a custom mix and have to respray everything because you would have variation in the shade. So anything that has a mixing ball in it, the first rule of mixing balls is shake the living daylights out of it. So I have been shaking this for quite some time. So I'm going to measure out some silver here. There we go. And there's quite a bit of stuff going to go in here still, too. So then we have the UVLS clear. This is 10% per volume. And again, this transitions the paint to an acrylic polyurethane. And this also has a mixing ball. So you shake the daylights out of it. And I have been. And so now I'm going to go with a 10% addition, which is right about there. And then the 40-11, I usually end up right in between the 10 to 20% range. And then I've got my little Tamiya stir sticks here that I mix in with. And it really gets to start to look like paint at this point. It kind of has a funky translucent look to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of that in. There we go. And now we're just going to mix this all up. I will strain this before I put it in the airbrush. And I'm just looking for that right consistency. And that looks pretty good. That looks right around what I'm looking for. So the one thing that you have to do with these paints, they recommend letting them acclimate for 10 minutes before you spray them. Because they have to chemically bond. And that helps to prevent a lot of things, a lot of bad things that you don't want to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix these again for another few seconds. And then they're just going to sit for 10 minutes. And then once they're done sitting, I will strain them. I'll just pour this cup into another cup and strain it with a paint strainer to make sure that there's no little dried pieces of paint or anything that's going to get in our finish that we're not going to like. Little bumpies, little hairs, little pieces of dirt. Strain all that out. And this looks perfectly like the perfect consistency that I like to spray. So there. So now we let that cure for 10 minutes, let it acclimate. Then we will mix it up again, strain it, put it in an airbrush, and we will go to the booth. I just wanted to show you guys that this is why we strain our paint. See all those clumpies? All that would have been in my airbrush if I didn't strain this paint. That's dried pieces of paint, pigment, dust, dirt, who knows what it is. But I tell you what it isn't. It isn't in my airbrush. And look at all this. Look at all those clumpies in there. And none of that went into my airbrush. So make sure you're straining your paint before you spray. And you end up with those little things in your paint. You wonder where they came from. Sometimes they came from right here. So we're spraying our silver here. I have run it through the strainer, strained it. And now I'm just Kind of giving it a little coat. There we go. And I'm doing both hoods silver because I need the silver as a base coat for both colors. The car that's silver and red, obviously I need silver as a base coat. And then the car that's going to be gold, or green, it's a metallic green and gold. That's a transparent paint, so I need a silver base coat. There we go. Now we'll just leave these cure. And we'll move on to one of the bodies. Here we go, the body. I'm going to, I like to blow a little bit of air out in case there's some dust. I'm just getting the hard to get spots, the edges, make sure that those are done. There we go. There we go. Now we can just kind of, this is a metal flake and I don't want to have any banding. So I go right down the whole car, front to back. No stopping. There we go. We get the trunk in. There we go. And we've got a mostly silver car. There we go. And that's that. So we'll let that go ahead and cure. And we'll just keep on going, probably with one other coat of silver just to make sure I don't miss any spots. And then we'll mix up some color and go from there. So it's time for us to mix up our green color, which is going to be the green and gold mixed. So I've been shaking these extensively to get them all mixed up. And I'm going to start with a 50-50 mix. So I'm looking at my labels on the side of this cup, and I'm going to do 1/8 an ounce of green, which is right there. And now I'm going to do 1/8 an ounce of gold. Now these are pearl-based colors, so these are pearl, and they are translucent, so you will be able to see through them. All right, and there's my 50-50 mix. So now I'm always kind of curious, like when you stir it, what do you get? So let's find out if we get the color that we're looking for. It's going to change a few times. It starts to look more green than gold, then it starts to look more gold than green, and then you start to settle in at your color. And if it ends up being exactly what you're looking for, then you're done. If not, you then add a little bit of this and a little bit of that until you come up with what you're looking for. And that is the color I'm looking for. Wow. 50-50 mix. That was what the instructions called for on the Firebird. I love that color. There's a little bit of gold to it. I had the opaques here just in case I needed a little more green or a little more gold. But I don't think I need absolutely anything. I think that is marvelous. Wow, that was easy. So now let's go ahead and I'm going to have to shake up this UVLS clear. Because this is what will turn that into an acrylic polyurethane, which is necessary for us to spray it through the airbrush onto the hard plastic surface. And this is, oh, what was this by volume? Was it 10%? I think it's 10%. Let's consult my instructions. So these are and it is transparent fluorescent airbrush color, and then this is the And I'm just making sure, yes, mix balancing 10% per volume, then fix 10, then mix, then thin 10 to 25% per volume. So I need a 10% of this, which is about that right there. It's an estimate, of course. And then this is going to have to sit for 10 minutes and acclimate while the chemicals do their things. Oh, I love this color. This color is great. This color is great. And now we're going to need some thinner so that this will go through the airbrush, because obviously this is much too thick. And that ought to do it for thinner. And I'm just going to keep mixing, keep mixing, keep mixing. And you can see it's kind of chunky a little, the paint. And it will calm down after it has settled for a little while and acclimated. And then I'm going to strain it, of course, because we don't want any clumpies going into the airbrush. And you'll notice I mixed up enough to paint 2 cars here. And I did that on purpose because this is a custom mix and I do not want to try and replicate it again. It'll never be the same exact shade ever again. And just to give you guys a look at that color, look at that. That is a marvelous color. All right, so I'm going to let this acclimate for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to strain it. And I think it is quite thin enough. It looks perfect. And then we're going to go to the booth and we're going to spray it. And it's going to darken a little bit when it goes over the silvery primer here. I think it'll darken a little. So I think it's going to be absolutely perfect. It's going to be the exact color we were looking for. And I think I'm done stirring it. I'm stirring the heck out of this. All right, so we're going to let this acclimate for 10 minutes, strain it, and I will meet you back at the booth. All right, so I'm getting ready to put down a couple of thin light coats of my green-yellow blend. It's a 50-50 mix, as you saw me mix it up. And again, I'm just going with some light coats here. The water base likes light coats. Build up the color slow. And that looks about good enough right there. So we'll go ahead and we'll let that cure. And now we'll go ahead and we'll bring in the body. There we go. And I always like to begin with the parts that are easy to miss. The bottoms. The edges. The levels even as possible. There we go. It's looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and we'll let that cure before we come in with our second coat. And we'll probably, it's covering pretty good. I'll probably do 2 to 3 coats. Make sure I get some nice even coverage. I got a light spot right there that I can see right now on the top of that window frame. I'm just going to shoot that right now so I can have as even a coat as possible. There we go. And we'll let that cure. We'll come back with another coat. Okay. We're going to come in and we're going to do another coat of the green, and the green is coming out great. It's exactly what I was thinking that I wanted to do for a color. Looks good. more coats, it'll darken up a little bit more. Look the part. It's looking good. Looking good. On my edges. And one swipe right down the sides. The airbrush moving, you do not want to have any banding or unevenness in the metal flake. There we go. Okay, we'll let that coat cure. And then I might do a third and maybe a fourth just to keep developing the color. I'll keep on doing that, and I'll bring you back when I've got a finished product here for you to look at. Thanks very much for joining me this week. We'll be back next week with more on the Pontiac Firebird 400s. We'll get those bodies moving along and finish them up, get some clear coat going. Also, don't forget to check me out on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, all as Angelo's Workbench. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and down in the description is a link to Hobbynut Models. Any purchases that you make following that link help support Angelo's Workbench. I thank you very much. We'll see you next week.